Perhaps Du Bois' glimpse into America's future was actually a cautionary tale assigned to the unfinished business of race and all things racial in today's society. Today, I just am here to address two concerns that relate to the nature of what's going on in our schools. And that is the notion of colorblindness and the power of language to either ennoble or demean in public discourse as a failure of leadership. Yes, the color line has found a salient place in Vermont. We are seeing it in disparities in the justice system and now in the discourse on education. This discourse, by the way, is not new to Vermont. It has just taken on a newer face of liberal denial, the face of colorblindness, and the refusal to talk about race and racism. Many in positions of both authority and power are caught up in an educational culture war, grounded in a politic of upholding the status quo. The divisive nature of the discourse has also been drawn along partisan lines, assigning coded qualities like civil and bully across the socio-racial divide, defining those who are insiders as civil and others who are outsiders as bullies. Even the religious leaders have taken sides in this forum. Not once have I heard any one of the people of the cloth talk about the issues of concern held by our students who feel marginalized in the schools. Actually, the students who walked out in protest experienced bullying, as well as their advocates at many board meetings. All I have seen and heard is a defense of the superintendent and a demonization of advocates and stakeholders for equity and equality. Since when did the church and state interfere in something as political as school? Often I would even think about asking, what would Desmond Tutu do in a situation like this? Not once has anyone, including the superintendent, addressed the issue of colorblindness, so stoically proclaimed and pronounced at a recent board meeting by those who are in her employ or under her administrative guidance. The mission of the Burlington School District Superintendent, as she states on her own blog, I am committed to developing an educational system that will enable us to reach our comprehensive community vision of excellence and equity. So I ask, how will she move the district forward in actualizing equity in a time when colorblindness is still a pervasive, confounding factor in the psyche of some under her leadership? Many who have shared their sincere fictions about race and racism at the last board meeting. How will she move the community forward if some folks with influence and power adhere to a colorblind philosophy as well? I'm personally very deeply concerned when I hear comments such as, I wish the adults in the community would stop talking about race. Children do not see race, so why bring it up? I don't see race, I see people. Or just the outright, I am colorblind. Colorblindness is camouflaged racism in a socio-political context. Social colorblindness is parasitic on racism and is only in a racist society that pretending that race is not visible is really constructing or looking at it as a virtuous act. Teacher perception, and the research tells us that teacher perception of racism in schools may have a very strong influence on how to interpret and respond to racial inequity, therefore prohibiting equitable outcomes. So we need to ask this question. If we still have people in places of influence, still standing up and being so married to these fictions of we live in a colorblind world, I am very, very concerned. In closing, I just want to leave you with this, and then I'm going to let my colleagues move on to what they have to say. We can call for a change in leadership, especially since much damage has occurred under our current leader's watch. But most importantly, we need to ask, what is her response to the youth and their plea for equity? Something the public really needs to hear from her heart, and not contrived sound bites from the PR team that is behind her.